Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome from the IFOCorp team. We're so grateful to have you all on call with us today. And we will just, as we go along, see if there's a few more people that join, but let us start with the people that's here and continue with that. So I want to welcome you to this fifth in the series of Why Academia webinars. And I'm not going to go through all the history that we did in the previous four, where we spoke about the system and what wonderful things the Academia Student Information System can do. But I do want to alert you that those videos, those sessions has been recorded, and you are welcome to request them afterwards. Jolene is going to send out this recording, and then please request from me if there's any others that you want us to send to you or that you want us to repeat. So this webinar session of Why Academia is going to be repeated once a month for 4 weeks, our session a week, and we will communicate the dates. Please also ask Jolene for the dates if you then want to join. So the first session was on user-enhanced experience. So why is Academia so wonderful in how the user experiences the system? The second webinar was on the customization and integrations of the Academia system. Then we spoke about technology and hosting. We spoke about the cost efficiency. Now, all of those are very relevant, especially in this period of working from home and business that's not as usual. And then today we have a very interesting and important one that ties in with, if you've now gone through the whole exercise of determining, is this the right system? And if you've chosen the software side of the system, how important is it to manage the change in your institution with regards to the human resources mostly, with regards to implementing a SIS? And that is what time that we're going to spend today on mostly. And with that, can I just introduce the IFOCorp team that is on call. You will see most of their faces as we go through the different parts of the session. I've got Deirdre and Rista, who is the owners of our change management team, and they're going to talk about the change management functionality and what we offer with that, and also how that can assist you as an institution in this process. Then Danzel is a senior project manager and Academia expert, and very involved in big projects that we have at this stage running in South Africa, where, for example, the University of Stellenbosch is implementing the Academia system. Then Romano Domingo is an account manager for the Academia system. And when you start to work with the system, he will be the one that is friendly face you'll see on site mostly. My name is Hanli. I am the General Manager for the Student Information System Academia, and we are all from IFOCorp, based in South Africa. And I'm not going to show you a screen on that, but having said that, the IFOCorp team operates throughout Africa, and there's a very wide spread of clients that we have in all the English-speaking African countries. So we are not unfamiliar with working in Africa, and we have a lot of clients already that operates in Africa. Okay, so let me tell you a bit about IFOCorp. The focus of today is going to be on Academia and the change management in that. But if you look at IFOCorp, where do we fit into the picture of you as the institution, and where does Academia fit into that picture? So on the next slide, you will see that we have a grouping of systems, starting off with the Academia Student Information System, and I'll spend very quickly after this a minute on that. Then we have very, very important in this period, our whole DigiCamba series, which is the learner management services and products, teaching, online teaching programs that we have, digital content development, hosting of learner management systems, implementation of learner management systems. We have a very wide set of skills and knowledge within that area, and in this period, I mean, that is one of the things that all the institutions know that is imminent in your business processes. Then Turnitin, which is already used very, very widely in Africa and South Africa, is the plagiarism detection software that allows you as an institution to guarantee the quality of the research and the assignments of the students, in the sense of, is this authentic, and what is the level of plagiarism that has taken place. Then lastly, we have Modo Labs, a very powerful mobile development platform that allows you as an institution to design your own mobile apps without going into a process of coding and the technical knowledge on mobile apps. The platform that we give to you takes care of that, and you just plug and play into that platform, which allows you to, as often as you want, design your own applications for different audiences or different stakeholders in the institution and deploy that directly to the stores, the Apple and Android stores. So a very, very easy, powerful tool to use. Then if I can spend brainwaves, I'm not going to talk about that. Is what Deirdre and Rista is going to give you information on. So what is this about today? This is about the change management on a system that manages the 360 cycle of students at the institution. On the left-hand side, you will see it starts with the business processes like campaigns and inquiries, managing your students through admissions, registration, if you've got residences, your total academic management coming from your structure, your curriculum, drilling down to all the details on attendance, timetables, interfacing with a learner management system, examination up until completion of the student cycle. So that it manages the whole cycle of a student. Then it also manages the finances of the student in this cycle. Now, you know from your own institution, the finances is embedded in all of these top modules like admissions, registration, residence management. It's embedded in all of those. But the system throughout this life cycle management also manages the student finances of the institution. You could have all that information, but if you do not have the communication tools and reporting tools, it actually makes it very difficult to do anything with the information that you have. And that is where academia definitely adds value in the very strong communication levels that we have through the portals to stakeholders, and you can determine your stakeholders. Of course, the students are always a stakeholder in a tertiary institution, but your parents are stakeholders, your managements are stakeholders, so your donors are stakeholders. And you can have portals for all of these stakeholders that you want to manage. Then also the CRM, which is a powerful tool built into the system, just as the reporting level is built into the system, that allows you to communicate easily, directly from the system without going to a third-party system through your messaging and your notifications. The report's the same. We use Jaspersoft as a reporting platform and allows you to generate powerful reports, customized to your own needs as you go along without intervention from the vendor anytime. And then we have a very strong level of dashboards that allow you as an institution to display information, push delivery to the end user or to the stakeholder that's relevant to that stakeholder or grouping of stakeholders. Very, very easy to distribute data via these methods. And I think that is where I'm going to stop on the system. So you've all seen the system in, hopefully in the previous sessions. And as I said, you've not, you're welcome to just request any of these sessions again. But the focus of today, and I'm going to hand over to Deirdre and Rista, is what do we do to assist you in the change that is going to come if you implement a student information system. Thank you, Deirdre and Rista.
Good morning, everyone. Such a privilege to spend this time with you this morning, especially around this very interesting topic of change management. I am, however, going to turn off my video camera to prevent any lag on the presentation audio. My connection is not that great, but I will see you a little bit later. Thanks. So the reality in our organizations and institutions today is that change is constant, and employees very often have choice and capacity limitations as well as capability constraints. And it's no different, you know, on an implementation like a academia system, which ask a lot of the people involved. So change saturation is at an all-time high, and resistance to change from employees is the norm and not anymore the exception, especially when change is being imposed on them or forced on them. And very often with system implementation, people, by the time that they hear that we're going to have a new system implemented, they already start to resist it because the buy-in wasn't there from the start. There's no communication from the start, and they almost feel like this is a forced change on them, especially if they're very comfortable with a current system and they do not understand why we are changing to a new system. So I'm going to cover a few introduction slides before we go over into an interview style session where we will hopefully cover some questions that are pertinent to change management on an academia implementation project. It is so important that we have a common understanding of what change management is, because people often think that change management, for example, on a project like an academia implementation, is something that is done to them and for them. However, change has everything to do with the people's mindset and their own decision to actively participate in the change process. This, of course, speaks to their willingness to adopt the new system. And it's for this reason that change management should not be viewed as simply a mechanism to reduce employee resistance and or a plan to mitigate the risk of negative things happening to the institution or organization during change. Change management provides a framework that enables individuals to adopt new skills and behaviors so that the business results are achieved. And herein lies the key to the success of making the change happen. A perfectly designed technology solution that no one uses creates absolutely no additional value to an institution or organization. So ultimately, change management, if we had to define it, enables employees to adopt a change so that the business objectives are realized. Now, did you know that research shows us that 75% of change initiatives fail? Why? The answer to that question is because of the lack of visible leadership. So what do I mean by that? Leaders are very, very important when it comes to change management. When a decision is made from a business requirement perspective, it is imperative that we have the leaders on board. The leadership must first and foremost buy into the change. They must have the ability to imagine the change and anticipate what the impact of the change will be on all the stakeholders involved. For this to happen, they must have empathy. Empathy is really a crucial characteristic that is needed on a change project, because so often, especially if you think about a new technology solution, it is, yes, it's for a business reason, but it's almost like, well, act or die. You have to adopt this system. But when a leader has that empathy in understanding what this is going to take of the individuals involved to make this change happen, that is when we have an understanding for the individuals that's going through this change, and where the leaders usually support their people and their teams during the change process. So leaders are really important role players when it comes to the communication around this change, being transparent why this change is happening, and I've already mentioned the support. And with that, I mean making sure that their teams are equipped to make the change happen. And this includes things like relevant resources, etc. It's very interesting, but leaders all have different leadership styles when it comes to leading change. By this, I mean some leaders lead with the heart, meaning they are people-focused. Some lead with the head, meaning they are more strategically inclined. And some lead with the hand, which means they have an executing style. Now, these styles are preferences, and leaders must be very mindful of what their preferred style is, so that they ensure they build capacity where they are too light on a specific style, for instance. So in essence, what I'm saying is the balance between the focus on people, the people involved in the project, and the strategy in terms of where we are going with this implementation. What does our vision look like? What is our success factors? And the execution on that project is very important from a leader's perspective. In today's working environment, change focuses on processes, on new technologies like the academia implementation, others on structure within organizations or institutions. But regardless of the type of change, each of these changes impacts at the end of the day how the individual employees do their jobs. The success of the change depends on the success of change management at encouraging individuals to embrace, to adopt, and to utilize a required change. If you think about a system like academia, that is what the ultimate measurement of successful change management is, to ensure that all employees are going to embrace this new system, they're going to adopt it, and they're going to utilize the system, and to enable each individual to make that transition from their current state where they find themselves in the beginning of that change project to the ideal future state where the system is implemented and they are proficient at using that system. It's very true that change for every one of us is very personal. And by enabling change to happen, one person at a time results in institutional change. So it's about that one person at a time, the individual, and ensuring that that individual has the buy-in and is involved in the process, in the actual change process. Now, where do we start? So it's very important to understand why people find change difficult or challenging. And at Eiffel Corp, our approach is grounded in neuroscience. Because neuroscience actually tells us that our brains are hardwired to fear change. But why is this? Well, change means, in the first instance, unpredictability and uncertain circumstances. When your workforce gets the message that we are going to implement a new system, immediately they feel threatened, uncertain. What does that mean? It's unpredictable in terms of, will I be trained? What is this going to take of me? What is this going to ask of me? So the brain finds this very uncomfortable. Now, from what neuroscience tells us, we know that the brain will be more accommodating of a change if you can lessen that fear and anxiety. And examples of the type of fears and anxiety on a new technology implementation is, like I've mentioned, people start to doubt, will I be able to learn and apply the new skills? Will I still have a job? Will my role be affected? All of that starts playing out in their minds, and they start to be fearful and anxious about the new change. Now, we at Eiffel Corp have some very sound strategies that's founded in neuroscience that we then incorporate as part of the process to lessen that fear and feelings of anxiety and to work with the emotional state of people and, of course, mindsets. And this includes things like increasing brain fitness, working with the mindsets to especially transition from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, keeping people informed by means of various communication channels, equipping leaders, enabling the people to adopt this change and to help them through this transitioning period of the change. Now, when it comes to change, emotions play a huge role. And change, I mean, take it from yourself in your personal life or in your work life. Change either tends to be positive or negatively perceived. And when change is seen as offering new opportunities or new possibilities and how it could be beneficial to you, then change is usually perceived positively. But when change is seen as bringing instability, upheaval, unpredictability, as I've mentioned, or it's threatening, then it is perceived negatively. And all of this has to do with our emotions and how we experience this change journey. So generally, individuals go through the following stages during the process of change. At the beginning, you know, that when they hear that we are going to implement a new system, they might be in shock, especially if they find themselves in a very comfortable place where they are currently. Then it moves over into denial, even anger and frustration. Sometimes even depression sets in, and it's often called or referred to as the valley of despair. Then they tend to move into experimental stage and a decision to comply, and eventually to the stage of acceptance. And that also varies. You know, they might find themselves in a better space during the process, and whoops, there they go again into the valley of despair. Depending on where the project is, how the project is managed, etc., that varies. And as can be seen from these stages, individuals' attitudes towards change evolve as they become more familiar with what this change is and what their role in this journey is going to be. Now, I'm going to move over to the next session of our webinar, which is our interview session. And we are going to structure this part of the session based on questions and answers from all of us on the webinar. And after we are going to be done with this session, we will then hand over to the room for any of your questions that you might still have. So for the first question, I'm going to hand over to Danzel. Thanks, Danzel.
Good morning. Thank you, Dire. My question would then be directed at Rista to just give us an explanation, an overview of why is change management so important on these projects and why change management?
Thank you, Danzel. I think the most important thing is when we speak about change management, people often think it's fluffy. People must just change. However, change management actually speaks to your institution's need to show proper ROI. And one of the only ways to actually really measure the success of system implementations is to see what the speed of adoption is, how quickly are individuals actually up and running and using the system and processes. How many people are using it? Are people using it? And how well are individuals performing, comparing with what is actually expected of them? So they should actually have a very quick speed of adoption and a quick ultimate utilization and proficiency on the system. So purely from that perspective, I can actually speak for hours on why, because you also can see when it's not happening. this is purely a practical and a very good reason to use, to actually do and apply change management in a structured way. Thanks, Denzel.
Thank you so much, Rista.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Romano Domingo. Excuse me for that. I'm from IFOCOP, and the account manager, his son, has introduced me. So the next question I actually want to direct at Denzel, who you just heard now previously asking the question to Rista. Since Denzel is actually active in with this, like Henri rightfully said, with implementing at Stellenbosch and at False Bay College, I'm eager to know, when implementing a system such as Academia, so where does change management fit in on an academia system? And why is it important?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Romano. Change management is really a key focus point, and I'll switch my video off just for a second, is a key focus point within project management. As Deirdre and Rista rightfully pointed out, is to aid the institution in transitioning from the old to the new. Project management per se is more focused on the technical and functional things. So we design, we develop, we deliver, we budget, and all of that. And we forget the people aspect as we go through the processes because we are just deadline driven. The change management is implemented concurrent to project management as they help you actually take the users or the end users for this new system, help them embrace, adopt the new system and the new functionality, and monitor throughout the adoption process where they are mentally, so that we can ensure at the end of the day they actually utilize the system as it's intended. So change management with project management ensures that we move gradually from the current state to the future state, and change management and project management constantly lock eyes with regards to where we are in the process to ensure that everybody moves forward at the same pace at the same time to ensure that we have a successful current future state. Sorry. Thank you, Romano.
Thank you, Denzel. On to the next question.
You see me again. Okay, so I want to know, and I'm going to direct this question to Rista. What would change management on an implementation typically look like?
So, Hanley, we've got certain approaches and methodologies, and it's always improving and getting better, but it's also always applicable to that specific institution. So it's a bit different, but we've got specific structures and specific process and models that we use. So I just want to speak to two of them. So when we work with people, really, really important that we look at people from a system perspective. Therefore, mindset, the culture, leadership, systems, behavior, skills. So it's an integrated approach. And then I think Deirdre also alluded to that, is one person at a time. And mindset comes in there because it's often not what happens around us, but the way we look at it. And we can actually influence one person at a time, and they influence someone else. So through mindset, we also establish and create change by influencing them, and they influence other people. And this is a basic structure that we use, and it's incredibly powerful if you can start changing people's minds. We use one of the frameworks, it's a model that we, an ATCAR model that we use to check in with people. So how do we know where people are? This is one of our ways of actually testing where people are so that we can inform leadership. This will also tell leadership what should be done to make sure that they are aligned with where we want them to be at this stage in the project. So people, also what Deirdre showed is people are at different stages, different times through the emotional curve. They sometimes even move back because something worked for them and then suddenly not. So we have to keep track. We actually work with this. We do dipsticks, we questions, we do surveys, and And ATCAR actually inform us, and we inform leadership, and they will always know where their people are, and they can actually make very important decisions actually with the information that we provide to them. And then just in short, we use a ProSci 3-phased methodology, preparing for change, then we manage the change, and then we will reinforce the change. Those 3 aspects are incredibly important, and I can speak a little bit to preparing for change. Now, this is a very incredibly important part of the change that happens, because this is also where you actually have lots of discussions, very good understanding of what's happening. In this part of this process is where you actually develop your change strategy. Now, the change strategy actually will inform how you will actually tackle various things, from communication, how will you will work with sponsors, how will you work with the change management team. There's lots of activities. I mean, I can go through each one of them, but just to maybe just to mention one is preparing teams for change is incredibly important. And I think often companies think they can do it themselves, but to have someone from the outside to actually help you to unpack where you are, where your people are, and reflecting it back, and you can actually see it in a different way, more objectively, because we're all involved in our own institutions and we see it in a certain way, and then suddenly someone comes in from outside and say, listen, let's unpack, this is what you're doing great, do more of this. Dieter, you can move on to the next slide. Managing change is naturally, it's the biggest part of the 3 phases, because it actually basically goes through the whole process. Communication, ongoing, the way we do it, the way we structure it, when do we communicate. Sponsorship, okay, how important are the sponsors? It is so important. And your executives, everybody must be on the same page. You know, coaching people when it's required, individuals versus teams. Training, incredibly important. People must be prepared for change. They must know how it's going. It gets quite complicated in the end. So to have a structured approach in change management is very helpful. And I can see when we work with institutions, they're so actually amazed by the things that they didn't even think about, and then suddenly it's just put in a packet and it's actually structured for them, and it is so effective. They've done it, but maybe not in the same way. So we execute all the plans that we've made in the first phase. And then phase 3, reinforcing change. This is where you get a lot of feedback, and we make sure that all the gaps between, you know, people maybe where they resist, what can we do to make a difference? What type of initiatives do we have to actually put in place? And also to celebrate success. I think success is something often that people do not celebrate on system implementations. And we put a lot of emphasis on that. People appreciate it a lot. Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Rista. You spoke about the activities in the change management process. So the next question I want to direct to Deirdre and ask her what activities form part of the change management process.
Thanks, Hanli. So our key change management activities include the activities as listed on the screen. And let me start with the stakeholder engagement. It is very important to identify the different types of stakeholders. For example, the direct stakeholders who are going to use the system and are impacted by the inputs and outputs of the system, as well as the indirect stakeholders whose interest in the system is enhanced and impacted by the data outputs of the system. So there are also external stakeholders who are not within the business itself, but who care about or are affected by its performance. The next very important activity is communication. I cannot stress the importance of communication enough. By following the correct communication principles specifically geared for a change project, you create awareness, you develop understanding, you promote buy-in, you solicit feedback, and you generate enthusiasm, which is much needed on a change project. So it's also very important to establish a change network, and to engage with this network is also super important. Assessment and monitoring are also key activities throughout the project, and it involves constant assessment of the impact of the change on people, processes and systems as well, constant gauging of the readiness level to make this change happen, and also to assess where people are on the change journey, as Danzel indicated, making that transition from current to future state. And Rista referred to the ADCAR assessment framework that we use, and that's where we actually make use of it to assess where people are in terms of their awareness, their desire, the knowledge and ability, and the reinforcement of this change. And then last but not least is training enablement. So the key concern individuals have even early in the project is, will I be trained on the new system? Training thus starts with the preparation of end users for the training, clear communication with regards to when and how training will take place, and involvement of all the end users in this process, the building of new skills and behaviors necessary for future success, and thus setting the end users up for success. And then, of course, the provision of ongoing support, even post go live. So there are many other activities as well, but these that I touched on are the most important and critical activities. And then I would like to hand over to Romano. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Deirdre. So the next question I actually want to direct to Rista, but before I do that, I just want to let everyone know that feel free, we would like you to participate in the chat box. I've already got questions from Maureen, Mr. Avono, thank you, and Deboho, I'm just letting you guys know that I see your questions. After the end of the presentation, I will raise them and I will direct them to both Rista and Deirdre. So Rista and Deirdre, please get it so long and think of questions. This is really an interesting topic this far. So to my question, Rista, who is typically involved in change management?
Romano, I think for starting out when we work with institutions is to tell them that, you know, we as IFOCorp will not come in and do the change for you. It's integral to the institution. So firstly, our sponsors naturally are incredibly important. So what we will do is, for starters, we will start putting a change management team together. That will, there can be various structures, but it must be people from the institution. And I think part of why this is so important, who's involved, is that when we leave, the capacity has been built in the institution. So as many as possible people will form formally, more informally, part of the change management process, executive management. They have an incredible important role as sponsors. If executives do not support the change, it doesn't happen. And I think Deirdre also mentioned that if leadership are not supporting it, they don't have buy-in, it's not going to work. So very important aspect. And I think we also try to formalize that and make sure that when we in the beginning, when we start with the strategy, we make sure that we know who the sponsors are because of their important role, and the executives on the specific with the system that's involved in the system implementation. And then management, faculties, HODs, people listen to their managers. and in communication, it is really important where it's coming from, not only what you're saying. I think people often forget that if you get an email from someone from another division, you don't really care, you don't even read it. But if you get it from your manager, you'll read it. So manager buy-in and the fact that they're part of this change, know what's happening, can communicate properly, incredibly important. And then the project team, naturally, all the information is coming from them. They are an integral part of this. So I think if I say that everybody should actually be that's involved there from the top to the users, because the more people are involved and they actually involved in the change and they know what's happening, the more effective and actually efficient the whole system implementation is in the end. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Rasta. And then on to the next question.
Thanks, Romano. Denzel, I would like to ask you as a project manager, what are the benefits of change management on an academia implementation from your experience? Thanks.
Thank you, Deirdre. As a project manager, one is normally very focused on your technical work and your technical work streams, your functional work streams, and find the best possible recipe in bringing these two together to make sure that at the end of the day, you've designed a solid product, you've developed a sort of solid product, and you deliver the product within budget and on time. So as project managers, we tend to forget people and people aspect of things. And yes, all of these things at the end of the day have to be done by people. So, but project managers are so focused on milestones and don't really consider the people state in which they operate on the project. For us as project managers, it's all about the delivery and the deadline and the milestone. So therefore, you need to have a stream on your project that focuses on the people that is not part, the focus is not really part of the project manager's skills in worry. People that keep an eye on the state of your project team as a whole, as well as the whole of your community's well-being, whilst going through this transitional process from an old system to a new system or an old process to a new process. Similar to what we have for projects, change management also have major project activities to execute and report on. They also design a communication plan, a training plan, execution plan, similar to what we do on a normal project plan. Your student information system is very wide and it reaches far across your institution, from your lower levels to more senior management people. As a project manager, you will definitely not have the capacity to get around to reaching all of these audiences. You are so consumed with your budget and your milestones that you drive your processes as hard as possible. You will definitely not be in a position to identify when people are in the valley of despair, as Deirdre pointed out earlier. And even if you do identify them, you would definitely need specialist skills to guide the people out of the valley of despair. As a project manager, that's most likely not something that you focus on. So therefore, you need a team that zooms in on the mental capacity of whomever is touched within this project, that guides the people through the transition phase and eventually accepts the product that has been delivered and make sure that the system is actually utilized. The benefit of having a change management work stream or a change management team on your project is not just to keep track of the end user process of transition, but also to assist in keeping track of project management's transition, because as project managers, we are also people. We also have a psyche and a well-being that needs to be looked after. Sometimes as a project manager, we run too fast. We change, we adapt, we apply agile methodologies and we implement sprints to get our processes out of the way. But change management helps project management actually in identifying if you're sprinting too fast or if you're sprinting too low, if we're leaving people behind. And all of these aspects, especially with regards to the people, if they are not on par or on board with regards to the project, if they are not progressing on the pace that we've defined in the project plan, you will end up with a failed project. So change management, having change management as part of your project management team is helping you as project manager, keeping fingers on the pulses throughout your implementation process and looking after the well-being of not just your end user community, but the whole project in totality. Thank you.
Thanks, Denzel. I would like to conclude this part of our webinar in terms of the interview session between ourselves with the following. We change for a reason. And on any change project, it is most important to ensure that everyone involved in the project understands the reason for the change on a personal level. What is in it for them to make this change happen? Because one reason people resist change is because they focus on what they have to give up instead of what they have to gain. And it is our work as change leaders, project managers, and the teams from the institution to help them realize the benefit of making the change happen. And not only that, but also the risk if they do not make the change happen. So on that note, I would like to conclude this, this part of the webinar, and I want to hand over to Hanli quickly. Hanli, I think there's some more participants that joined. Would you like me to go back to the intro screen before we open the room for questions?
Yes, Deirdre, that is maybe a good question. I think you can, because there's quite a few people that has joined. No, Deirdre, I think to make this a bit more streamlined, why don't you answer the questions first? Romana could address the questions, and then when you're finished, you can just go back to that second slide, and we can just quickly run through that one again. Thank you.
Apologies, I thought you want to show that screen first, 100%. Romana, I can unfortunately not see the chat, but you can maybe give us the questions, and between Denzel, Rista, and myself, we'll answer as best as possible. Thanks.
Thank you, Deirdre. Please, everyone, your questions look very interesting, and I'm excited to challenge Rista, Denzel, and Deirdre with these questions. So please keep the questions coming. We want you guys to participate because we believe in relationships, and to build a relationship, we need to take part in this session to better understand each other. So without further ado, this is a very interesting question coming from Maureen. So anyone feel free to jump in and answer this, or between amongst you three. What is the role of change management in knowledge management, and how are they related?
Maureen, I will give it a stab just to understand it right first. So knowledge is power, and when people are empowered and have knowledge about things, there's less resistance and there's more buy-in. So when we work with institutions, they're differently structured. We work with either their communications division, or if knowledge management falls under each one of them, it really depends. So we provide information and to the knowledge management division whenever required, as much information as needed. The interaction is only as and when required. There's no formal structure of the way we should do it. It really depends on your institution and the need and the way you are structured, also in terms of how you communicate to your staff, to your personnel, and to people. So I think change management is more informing and giving and providing information, and if knowledge management has a certain structure that they want information to be channeled for specific reasons, that is something that we will incorporate in our communication strategy. I'm not sure, did I answer your question?
I can add a little bit on to what Deirdre Christa has been saying, is that if you've looked at the activities that Deirdre briefly pointed out earlier, is that part of what change management can actually bring to the table is assisting with the training and a training plan or training strategy, if you will. So part of the training strategy in terms of what our change management team actually does is they can execute or perform a training needs analysis with regards to where users are on a particular system or in a particular process and how to take this forward. So that is actually managing the knowledge with regards to your system and your business processes per se. If you want to apply your change management to any other project like a learning management system, surely they'll jump in there and do the analysis as and when required.
Thank you, Denzel and Arista. Guys, there's really good questions coming through. Deirdre, Rista, and Denzel, please go through them because, like I say, I want you guys to think of the answers because the questions that are coming through is really good. And with this second question coming in, I know as an account manager, I normally deal with clients or partners. When I go there, and this question relates to what I'm saying right now, when I go there, I speak to the IT director, the registrar, the anyone involved, and when I ask them sometimes, like, if they understand what we're speaking about, and they'll normally tell me, yes, they do understand, but the resistance normally comes from the top when they try and communicate it to the stakeholders or the decision makers within this institution. That's normally where the resistance comes in. So before the resistance is passed on from to the lecturers, before they are resistant, the resistance is normally at the top level as well. And with that said, how do you deal with the issue of resistance in the change management process?
Romano, Denzel, Rista, I'll start and please add if there's anything else. But I think, as I've mentioned in the presentation, the resistance comes mostly when people do not understand why the change is happening. So they do not have a clear understanding of what's in it for them. What is the benefit? How will they benefit from them? I mean, if you take it, from yourself or for each one of us, if I just have to change and it's forced on me, but I do not understand the reason behind it, and so it does not make sense to me, then I resist. If it is something that is forced onto me, I resist because I want to think about it. I want to understand. I want also to have clarity and transparency around how it will impact me. So it comes back to communication. It comes back to leadership support. It comes back from that to the leadership buy-in, top down, so that we start with our leadership. They have a good understanding and they can actually relay that message to the workforce so that there's a very clear understanding why business decided to make this change. Why did we decide to implement academia? Why are we not going with our current system anymore? And if I then understand in my specific role and my department what the benefits will be, I will tend to start, accepting that change. And that's not to say that it's still going to be an easy process, but at least I am open-minded, and that's where we can work with people to actually help them through that transitioning. Arista, Denzel, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would like to add to that?
Yes, and I think maybe also, sorry.
You go ahead, Rista.
No, so people also resist throughout the process for different reasons. But it's always linked to the information that they receive and the benefit in that for them. And we also things that we do, communication, so we have to make sure that communication is right. That's the way that we deal with that. We do facilitation, coaching for groups, for individuals, wherever it's needed. So we we're always testing the ground, because resistance can easily be dealt with if you actually, preferably you don't want to go there, but if you communicate properly and things are structured from the beginning, resistance are much less.
Yeah. I would just like to add from my experience with the change management team and the projects that I'm involved with is, and I think I've indicated that they are sort of part and parcel of the project management team, because they're executing an activity that a project manager doesn't really look at. One key thing that I've experienced with the change management team and project management team working together is that they have literally their fingers on the pulse. They have constant interviews, constant questionnaires, constant surveys to gauge where people are, and they adjust their communication styles and methods to dependent on the level of user that they're actually working with. And through this is what I found through my experience with the change management is through this, they guide the communication, and they steer the communication to work on the resistance so that people can actually embrace what we are currently doing in highlighting constantly the positive aspects of the process that we're actually changing or transitioning.
Thanks, Denzel. Just one more thing that I'm thinking about is, you know, sometimes in that process, we do not always have the answers, but through the surveys and through the assessments, themes will emerge. Say, for instance, people are fearful about their jobs, they will start resisting. And if there's not clarity at that stage of the project, that's also an answer to tell people that, you know, this will evolve, but keep the people you know, inclusive and involved in the conversations. And even that, you know, helps them to make the transition, because they know that they are part of the conversations in terms of how the roles will work out, the structures, etc. And that set them at ease, even though there's not sometimes a clear or a perfect answer, but there is conversations going. So I think in essence, it is about communication at the end of the day. Thanks, Ramona.
Thank you guys for such a fruitful answer, and I hope that everyone got the gist and got the clarification on that answer, because like I said, it's a big answer, it's a lot to take in, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to one word, and that's communication. And without communication, we cannot change. And here's another very interesting question in Mr. Avono. If I do not articulate the question well enough, you feel free to unmute yourself. You can even switch on your camera if you're comfortable to pose this question to the team. So this is from Mr. Komla Avono. Evaluation of change is difficult in my eyes and sometimes very tricky. Sometimes it takes a lot of time. How much time is necessary for change?
I think it is difficult to link a time frame or a period to change, because change is a process. It's not an instant thing. It's definitely a process. So on a project life cycle, right from the start, even, you know, with that launch of the project, right from that start up to the end where that system is implemented, that is the change journey, and even beyond that. In terms of the evaluation thereof, I would say an indication of measurement speaks to what Rista mentioned in her answer with regards to ROI as well, is if we see that people, you know, adopt the new system, they use the system, but they do not only use it, but they use the system proficiently and they're comfortable on the system. I think suffice to say that the change then has been integrated and that they have made the change. But timing to that is difficult. It's a process during the project and beyond. Denzel, anything maybe from your side or Rista that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, from my side, I think it's very, very difficult to link a timeline to it. once again, I can just speak from my experience on change management is what I found that Deirdre and Rista is very well equipped with is that they constantly evaluating, re-evaluating, assessing, reassessing to gauge where people are in the process and identify individuals that needs maybe additional workshops, additional guidance
Coaching.
throughout the coaching. That's the ideal world, coaching throughout the process. So that is what I found that they do. And bearing in mind that your communication and your change management, from my experience, in terms of what Rissa and Deirdre execute, is a continuous process. It's actually a never-ending process because you can guide
Yeah.
people, even if they've adopted the system and is utilizing it at the end of the day, there will always be something that you can talk to or talk about throughout a user life cycle.
Yeah.
And I just, one thing extra is that the culture of your institution also has an impact on that. So the change readiness, how quickly you adapt to the change, and there's a lot of things that you put in place to make sure that the best results will potentially be reached, and that's why a structured approach is so useful.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, guys. And that comes back to the when we started our presentation on the screen, it said that one thing that's always constant, and that is change. And I don't think change will really ever. It's a never-ending process. We just have to continually go on, strive for to get more out of it. There's another question, and this is also an interesting one when it comes related to managers. Say, for example, as an account manager, I'll use that again. Example, I go see the IT, I see the register, I see the deputy principal, I see the academics, them wanting to communicate to anyone else. Who does managers, and this question is from Baluku. It says, do managers need to have specific qualities to implement change?
You know what? I think if you're willing and you support the change and you're willing to work with the project team, with the executives, with the information, the only thing that's required is that you're willing and actually, that would be the biggest thing. With personal experience, honestly, if someone, they can have all the skills in the world. So we do not train, I think, as part of our change process, we also provide certain capabilities and we teach people by default. And if someone is willing, they will pick it up and they will work with it. So you can grow your capability in terms of change management and how to apply it. And we also give a lot of guidance and facilitation around that. So originally you don't, I think if you like working with people and you want to make a change, that would be, for me personally, one of the biggest things that someone should have.
Romana, I think from my side, to add on to what Rista said and to what I've covered in the presentation, empathy is really something that is a crucial characteristic that a manager should have to understand what people are going through, on this change journey. And then, as I mentioned, in terms of the leading preferences styles, that some managers are more strategically orientated, some more people focused or more execution focused, but to have a good quality between those three areas in terms of how they lead change with their teams, that's quite important. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I hope that you guys are actually taking notes of this answer. And before I go to the next question, I also just want to make it clear that we in the past, we have spoken a lot about the academia system, and anyone that has joined today that's only seen the change management part of it and haven't seen the other side of it, please, guys, I'll leave an email address in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out to us. If you guys want a personal demonstration, if you guys want to show it to your stakeholders, if you are here today and you are the decision maker, please reach out to us and we can gladly set up where we can come in with our change guys, Denzel, Anli, myself and do a proper presentation for you. So guys, Denzel, Deirdre, and Rista. The next question is from Jason Makota. And I think this is a powerful question, actually. So again, guys, you need to have I want a good answer from you. How do you resolve change management if the resistance is premised on organizational politics? There's a lot of fire in that question.
It's not an easy answer, because when we come in as change managers, we do look at culture, we would make certain suggestions, and I think it's politics are really making things difficult. It's not going to be good for the project, and it's really important to take note of that. And it's not going to be the change managers, the process, or the team that's failing. Are complicated and actually handling the process, it will be difficult. I have to be honest. I don't know, Denzel, Deirdre, I don't know if your experience is different, but that's my experience.
Denzel, I'll go and then I'll hand over to you. I think, yes, and it's a reality. We find that all the time. It is a tricky one. It's also, it also poses an opportunity for us as change managers, because, you know, we tend to realize then how, you know, once we're part of a project for a couple of months, we understand, or we get a better understanding of how that politics work, and you also know who are the influencers, you know, on the project in terms of the client side. So you make use of your influencing resources to assist you with that. But as Rista said, by no means is that easy on a project, and it's actually, there's nothing good about the politics. And if it's, you know, if it's so bad, then we as change managers, we also have, we have a stand on the project to highlight that. And I think that's a good thing. Being consultants, not within the institution, but coming from the outside, we have more of an objective view, and we make use of that to highlight that. Your project sponsor is crucial on the project. In most of our cases, we would highlight things like that to a project sponsor or a steercom, and we make use of those resources to help us manage and navigate the politics on the project. Denzel, maybe something in addition to that from your side?
Yeah, I think for me, and this is what I found, is that the communication that the change management guys actually do aids in the political process, if you want to call it that. As project managers, you identify high level there's a political issue, but you're still driven to produce and get to the end line or the goal line. And this is where project management is so important, because they'll gauge the project manager and say, you are too fast. There's an issue here that needs addressing. And sometimes it's individual communication, and sometimes it's grouping and workshops and reporting. Sometimes it's just a cup of coffee to try and ease whatever political situation is persistent in the project. But the ultimate key throughout all of this is you'll always find the organizational politics in any project that you do. It's how you communicate and how you deal with it going forward that actually helps take the project further than just being influenced by political decisions and organizational politics.
Correct.
Thank you for that. Here's another one from Mr. Avono, and I want to read to you. It's quite, Mr. Avono, it's not actually that long, but it's okay. You can type. It's your moment. Mr. Avono says that in my environment, I experience something more than resistance. People find your ideas for change very great and even express voice of enthusiasm to see that change. However, in implementation, they will tell you that they need time for that. They'll act very slowly, taking you back sometimes, they'll say you have to be patient. It's a kind of slowness you can't bear sometimes. Maybe the process of change should take a lifespan for them. And he says, excuse me for writing so long, but personally, I think we have to take into account time. So how much? And then
it's really, the timing issue is really difficult. I think just from a project management perspective, you are driven by time and timelines and deadlines. And this is where the change management and project management constantly lock eyes within a project, because yes, I'm driven by time, but change management will come in and pause me on certain actions. Before the execution of the action, there might be some additional coaching that's required. And you cannot really, even if you progress as a project manager, it's going to lead into a failed project. So you have to give change management the necessary time to do the remediation before, as a project manager, you can continue. So, and once again, it depends on the person, it depends on the culture, it depends on the institution, on how quick change management can do the coaching and get through that so that the project manager can actually continue. But it's really, really important that the interlinking or the locking of eyes between change management and project management happens sort of simultaneously to make sure that everybody progresses at the same pace.
Mm. And I think if you find it difficult from what I can hear, is that upfront buy-in, almost like launching the project, so that everyone has a common understanding, again, why this change is beneficial. If you can get that right, that impacts on your time frame in terms of how long it will take for people to get on board and, you know, stop resisting and actually start to form part of the change. It's very important that time that you spend in the beginning of a project, how you launch it, how you communicate, how inclusive that process is, all of that plays a role in the timing aspect in terms of how long or you know it will take to get people on board. That's something that I think is very important.
I think I would really like to understand, perhaps, and that's also usually where we come in, is to understand, why are people doing it slowly? What is the reason for that? Maybe knowledge, maybe they don't feel so comfortable. It can be various reasons. We often assume things. That what we usually do as part of a process is to do check-ins, dipstick questions, and we sort of get a feel. I mean, I don't know, maybe you do know why they're doing it. It can be resistance, but sometimes it's often just not having enough skills or knowledge.
Thank you, guys. Mr. Avono, do you want to post the question?
Can I just add on to the timing thing? And I know it sounds like it's a very pressing issue, but any project is linked to a timeline. So, and it comes in again with regards to the coordination between project management and change management. Before we actually get to the project activities and executing the project activities, change management actually steps in way before we start there to gauge, to ascertain, to evaluate, and to actually start the coaching before we actually start the project activity. So change management is sort of 2 steps prior to what the project actually is. So they come in before the project actually starts and do that determination of where we are, bearing in mind that the project is maybe 12 months or 18 months or 24 months long. And this is where once again, the coordination between project management and change management is so important, because yes, we need to still work in change management while we achieve the project deadlines that's been posted to us.
Thank you. Anli?
I want to butt in here, so I think we were at a stage where we're going to conclude this session. Most of the questions have been answered. If there's more sessions or questions that is specific focused on things that the change management team have addressed, please communicate with them. We're going to send you the contact detail, and then you're more than welcome to take up this discussion with them again. But I think for us for this session, let's get to a stage where we conclude and we end the session. I just want to ask Deirdre to go back to that second slide on the presentation. As a lot of people have joined later, I want to again highlight, because I know for those of you that has only come into this series of webinars at this stage, it may seem that it's, you can go one back, Deirdre. Yes, thank you very much. It may seem that this just fits into a single picture that's not part of something. And therefore I want to go back to, this is part of a 5-series webinar. Now this webinar series will be repeated in August and then October again, and then throughout the year, every 2 months, we repeat this webinar session. And the idea is, or the series of webinars, so the idea is that if you identify in your institution you have a need to look at the student information system, that you are in the preparation process and you don't want to start off with individual discussions or individual meetings with us, you are welcome to attend these webinar sessions. Just register for them before the time so that we know who's going to attend. And then we can take you through the system systematically, as well as if you then have a need for the change management session again, we can do that. Otherwise, if you have a need for us to individually speak to you, please get in contact, and I'll give you the contact detail now. Please get in contact, and then we can either do these sessions individually at your institution, or we can have a general session where we discuss the Academia system, we discuss the change management. You only speak about change management, that is totally up to you. So let us address it individually or attend the webinars. So from our marketing team, Jolene, who is on the call, is going to send out a mail after this with a recording of this session that we had. And she will also include the contact detail where you can then get hold of us. Jolene, can I ask you to also include Deirdre and Rista's details? So if you have something specific on change management, you could contact them directly. If it's with regards to the Academia system, then use the contact detail for the Academia system, and we will address it directly through that. I am going to close this off with a very sincere and hearty thank you. It has been so nice to speak to all of you. It is really wonderful for us to give you an idea. I mean, we even cannot wait to give you a better idea of what happens in the Academia system and what we can address with the system. And then the question, why do you need to look at Academia compared to any other student information system that we have? So from that angle, I want to thank you and really put an open invitation to you. Get in contact with us if you want us to talk about this anymore. I'm going to ask the IFOCOR people if you are willing just to put your videos on, and just so that we can have a proper goodbye from everybody. But then from my side, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We really enjoyed the session. And then everybody can say bye on their own, and then we will see you next in August when we repeat this webinar series. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Hanli.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Keep well. Cheers. Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.